you, how's it going? My name is Ruby Price and today I have another update from my 30 Before 30 bucket list. So on my 30 Before 30 bucket list I can now tick off the entry that was to start a podcast because I started a podcast. So, here is just a video length reason about why I wanted to start a podcast and why you should listen to my podcast. Hey you, how's it going? My name is Ruby Price and you're listening to the video exclusive edition of Fresh from the Scene. So let's go back to the beginning. When I started university, I was really heavily invested in the Radio Society, Radio Hood. I spent 3 years doing a show, Rubes Off Camera, which made me 100% comfortable behind any microphone, talking about, anything really that comes into my head. The show itself, Rubes Off Camera, was basically just me talking about my favourite music week after week, playing songs from pop punk and alternative rock bands. There were occasions where I very loosely used those terms so that I could play things that I basically just wanted to play by the end of it. I was invested in Radio Hood. I joined the committee in my second year. I was the head of reviews, so I was charged with arranging interviews with artists and securing press coverage for our station at gigs. And then in my final year I was elected as the station manager of the station, which basically meant I was in charge. The station would be mine to mould into my image and how I wanted the station to be on paper. Some things you just don't have the budget to do. But during that year I gave everything to that station so that by the time I reached the end of the academic year I was 100% burnt out. But during that time, I became in love with all things audio-based that I could work on myself. I started paying more attention to music mixing. I started paying more attention purely just to audio editing. And I like to think that came across in the way the audio aspects of my videos came across during that time period. I tried pretty hard to up the production quality of my videos across this time. And I'm still trying to up the production quality of my videos now. So obviously when I was writing my 30 Before 30 list, at the time, the one thing I wanted to do with my life at that point was become a radio presenter / producer. And the way that I saw it, if I just went into audio production as itself, making a podcast that was my own, gave me the opportunity to build on the skills that I'd been developing during my 3 years at university and do something with them. Even if I was unsuccessful at getting a radio job as soon as I left uni. Granted, over a year later, I still don't have a radio job, but now I have a podcast. Yeah, there were many different forms that this conceptual podcast took place in. I was going to do a podcast purely about trans stuff. It was going to be called Trans Talk, a bit like my video series, but extended across things. I would speak to people, I would talk about different aspects of being trans, and I did record a pilot of it with my friend Chloe. But there was something that just wasn't quite right about it, and I just couldn't quite nail it. And it wasn't going to be something that I would be proud to put out there. It would have been something I would have been like, cool, I've made this, here it goes, it's going out there, and then it's done with. And the thing is, that probably might have even got a bit of traction because of the fact that, I'm known for making things about being trans. That's one of my USPs when it comes to content creation. I say USP, it's not very USP anymore really, is it? It's more SSB, specialist, rather than unique. But, hey ho. I wouldn't have been proud of it if I'd put it out there with the way that the pilot was recorded. It just wasn't up to the quality of something that I would feel happy to, put out there. So that idea, just never really came about. It could still come about in the future, who knows? I'm not saying no to it. I'm just saying no to the version that already exists. So during all of this time, you must be thinking, okay, so, you finished uni and then a year and a half later you actually made a podcast. And that's true, I did. I started doing a lot of research into the distribution process of podcasting because ideally I wanted to spend as little money as possible because at the time all I had was a dishwashing job. So, I was looking online everywhere and I was like, I really don't understand this, I don't know what's going on. All I'm hearing about is just RSS feeds and a lot of other technical jargon that I still don't understand, which is probably why I can't remember it. So I spoke to a couple of university lecturers that I knew from my days at the University of Huddersfield and was like, can you tell me as much as you can about podcasting and the journey from, having a fully finished podcast to having it on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those others. So I got sent a list of a couple of podcast hosting platforms. Audioboom, Podbean, there was a couple of others, but Audioboom and Podbean were the ones that sort of like stuck out from memory. I had a look at them and was like, cool, okay, I'll set up a profile. But I had nowhere to actually, sit and record it. Like, I have an interface, I have a microphone, I have headphones, but my house just isn't really noise proof. It's an old house, the walls are thin, the gap between the ceiling and the roofs of each floor are thin as well. I'm not really sure what they're called, to be honest. But, noise travels around this house. So I didn't want to do it here. Jump forwards a couple of months after, just sitting there on a couple of ideas, and I'm all of a sudden going back to university. I'm doing a master's, and I have access to the studios that the university has to record these podcasts. At this point I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going back to university, why don't I just do a show on Radio Hood again, but use this concept that I've been thinking of? And I was like, I could do that, but as I said earlier, I had burnt myself out with how much I committed to Radio Hood in my final year, and now I was doing a master's, I had an extra step up to do. So I decided not to rejoin Radio Hood. I decided that I was going to do a podcast and I was going to take charge of it. I still didn't have a 100% nailed down concept though. I knew I wanted to do something about music. My degree was in music journalism, and I have a lot of friends who are involved in music. So what I started doing was I started listing all of the sort of like Yorkshire and Manchester musicians that I could theoretically have access to. There was about 40 to 50 names on there. And then all of a sudden it clicked. I was going to do a music-based interview podcast covering the Yorkshire and Manchester music scenes, but primarily based in Huddersfield. And that is how Fresh from the Scene was born. I went down the Audioboom route. I paid money so that I would have a year's worth of podcast hosting. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen when that year runs out, because currently I can't afford another year's worth of podcast hosting, but I guess we'll see what happens. There are methods that I could employ to gain that finance. I was actually thinking merch, maybe. Like a Fresh from the Scene t-shirt with the logo like on the pocket or something, I don't know. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, or find a way of letting me know if you don't comment. Because Fresh from the Scene merchandise would actually be pretty cool, wouldn't it? It would just sort of like, it would be the coming full circle of the idea, yeah. Just let me know. So with this list, I took a couple of friends who I knew would probably say yes to the idea. We went into a studio, we recorded a couple of episodes ahead of the launch so that I would be able to be like, cool, here is this brand new thing that I'm doing, and then it wouldn't reach the next week and I'd be like, right, this thing's going on hold because I don't have a second episode. I got a couple of episodes done. I spoke to my friend Alex Vallejo for the first episode. We had a couple of technical issues, which meant that the first episode sounds not the best quality, but the interview I think was too good to sit back and go, alright, cool, we're going to redo that again and it's going to sound completely fake. So yeah, it's a shame because the first episode is the one that everyone listens to first, theoretically, but it was a good interview. So with 2 episodes already recorded, the podcast went live. The people seemed to be enjoying it, and then all of a sudden I started speaking to more people who weren't originally on this list. It became an opportunity. I saw people online and I was like, hey, I've got this podcast. Why don't you come and talk on it? And they said yes, so, we went ahead. At the time of recording this video, I've spoken to Alex Vallejo, Skies Turn Black, Luke Rainsford, Toby Burton, Charlie Hooler, Josh Fielden from Fielden Audio. I covered Pop Punk Pileup Fest 2, which meant that I spoke to Luke Rainsford again, Lion Estates, A Night in November, This Time Last Year, and Harrison Rimmer. I spoke to Michaela from Oaths, Sean Smith from The Blackout, Sapnin Podcast, and Raiders, Alex Tracy, Liam James Ward, and the most recent episode to go out was with Jamie, Tom, and Connor from Resist in Retrospect. I said in a video near the start of the year I want to reach 25 episodes of this podcast by the end of the year, and if you were counting, I'm currently on 13. Though by the time this video comes out, there may be a 14th episode already, so yeah. So if you know someone, or you are in a band based around Manchester or West Yorkshire, and fancy making a trip to Huddersfield and speaking to me for 40 minutes, you know, get in touch. Let me know. Let me know who you think I should speak to. What I really want to go and do with this podcast though is like go and cover a festival. Pop Punk Pilot 2 was great in the sense that it gave me that first step so that I knew that I'd be able to do it. But, you know, now I've got that taste. I want to go forwards and I want to go and interview people at Slam Dunk. I want to go and interview people at, you know, like Leeds Fest. They're all prime examples really for this podcast. The thing about this podcast though is that like I don't want it to be just a run-of-the-mill music interview. Got this song coming out next week, like what's going on with that? Obviously questions like that make up part of the structure, but what I really want it to be is a conversation between two people talking about themselves, talking about music, and talking about, you know, everything. Anything that comes into mind. And most importantly, I just want to make them. So if that sounds interesting to you, there will be a link in the description to my podcast. There always is, but you know, there's a link in the description. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, you can listen to it on Spotify, you can listen to it on so many different platforms. You know, if you can think of it as a platform, it's probably there. We're even on Deezer now, which sounds strange, but I guess we are. All you have to do, you know, is just click follow, have a listen, share the podcast that you enjoy, and let other people know that it's happening. That'd be fantastic. If you've listened to my podcast, let me know in the comments below which one was your favourite episode. If you haven't listened to it, you know, let me know what you think. Do you just not listen to podcasts? Is it something you just not got around to yet? Yeah. Should I make Fresh from the Scene t-shirts? Would you buy one? I would try and make them affordable, and I would try and make them like a more limited thing. If you bought them now, like they would be a very special thing in the sense that the design would be something that would be very limited to this time. Just let me know. I'm curious. It's an option. I think the same goes for generic Rubes merch. So like this YouTube channel and stuff too. Let me know. Or if you have any other ideas for, you know, Fresh from the Scene / Ruby Price YouTube channel merchandise, let me know. Give me some suggestions. I'm open to it. As long as you guys are too. That's all that matters. It also makes for good giveaway prizes. If you did enjoy this video, maybe give it a like, share it on social media, all that generic YouTube stuff. Like, share, comment, subscribe, to use the quote that I seem to have come up with. Yeah, as always, I've been Ruby Price, and I shall see you next time. Adios. Bye.